Chapter 14 of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, the story of King Bena. Hare Vapaya Posha Posha Tasya Anartha Brit Posha Tasya Anartha Brit Bena Prakritya Khalai Vena Prakritya Khalai Sunitha Garba Sambhava Sunitha Garba Sambhava Aheri Vapaya Posha Posha Kasya Anartha Vena Prakritya Khala Sunitha Garba Sambhava Ladies, please. Of a snake, Iva, like, Payaha, with milk, Poshaha, the maintaining, Poshakasya, of the maintainer, Api, even, Anartha, against the interest, Brit, becomes, Benaha, King Bena, Praktitya, by nature, Eva, certainly, Kalaha, mischievous, Sunitha, of Sunitha, Bena's mother, Garbha, the womb, Sambhavaha, born of, Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The sages began to think within themselves. Because he was born from the womb of Sunitha, King Vena is by nature very mischievous. Supporting this mischievous king is exactly like maintaining a snake with milk. Now he has become a source of all difficulties. Translation purport. Saintly persons are generally aloof from social activities and the materialistic way of life. King Vena was supported by the saintly persons just to protect the citizens from the hands of rogues and thieves. But after his ascendance to the throne, he became a source of trouble to the sages. Saintly people are especially interested in performing sacrifices and austerities for the advancement of spiritual life. But Vena, instead of being obliged because of the saints' mercy, turned out to be their enemy because he prohibited them from executing their ordinary duties. A serpent who is maintained with milk and bananas simply stores poison in his teeth and awaits the day to bite his master. Hare ivapaya pasha, poshakasya pyanartha britvina prakriteva kala sunita garba sambhavaha. The sages began to think within themselves. Because he was born from the womb of Sunitha, King Vena is by nature very mischievous. Supporting this mischievous king is exactly like maintaining a snake with milk. Now he has become a source of all difficulties. So this is a very interesting story about a king named Vena, who became literally venomous, like snake. This example is given to maintain this king is like feeding venomous snake. Interesting. And actually, the word kala, which is used, many interesting words in this particular verse. Of course, the first very prominent one is Anartha. So the king was infested with anarthas. So he was anarchist. We have anarchy, right? And we philosophy of anarchy, just do whatever you want in life, right? Anything goes. But it's actually sprouting from anarthas, right? Because there is an order coming from the Supreme Lord, and so if anyone goes against the order, that's anartha. And so anartha, artha means wealth, right? And we know that dharma is automatically producing what? Artha, right? Any of you experienced that since you've started chanting Hare Krishna, you became more fortunate in your life? So artha means wealth or fortune. And so, but if someone is doing adharma, it produces anartha, the opposite process, right? And so, of course, we as devotees were not interested in dharma just for the sake of artha, to have kama, sense gratification, and moksha, liberation. The purpose of the devotees is prema, to serve the Supreme Lord with love. But the sequence is exactly the same, that dharma always produces artha. But for devotees, they use artha for Krishna instead of themselves, and therefore kama is also Krishna's, right? Krishna is Kamadev, the original Lord of enjoyment and love, and so Lakshmi Sahasra Sata Sambrahma Sevyamanu, he is surrounded by so many goddesses of fortune. So Krishna is the original enjoyer. This is Vaishnava definition of the Lord. Mundane definition is, or mundane religious definition is that don't be mischievous, children. Don't be like King Vena. King Vena was mischievous, so don't be mischievous. Be devotees. All right? Otherwise, there is no purpose of sitting here. You can play outside, okay? So if you sit here, you listen. If you don't sit, go and play outside, okay? So, yeah, devotees, they want to serve the Lord and make the Lord enjoy, and therefore our definition of the Supreme is very different from ordinary, mundane religious definition. God is the Supreme Controller. Our definition is much higher. God is the Supreme Enjoyer. Actually, all the controlling functions He is delegating to so many others, right? Vishnu, Brahma, Shiva, they all control. But Krishna just leaves enjoyment, pure enjoyment for Himself, all the best. And so, therefore, we want Krishna to enjoy, and that's our purpose. For ourselves, we're not interested in anything, but for Krishna we are. And therefore, even though the sages were not interested in any benefits for themselves, but they realized that this king is acting against Dharma, and in this way everyone will suffer, right? And so they decided to, as we will learn later, to remove that king. And this is very interesting. And this is just their conclusion, that they came to a conclusion that king was Kala, mischievous. And the word Kala is very interesting. It has different translations. One translation is envy. The other one is poison. So everything bad is expressed through that word Kala. And so, yeah, this king was really poisoning everyone, because he was brought up to the position of the controller, and now he was abusing it. So abuse is very typical thing in the material world. Materialistic people always abuse their position, even though they are getting that position by the mercy of the Supreme Lord and His representatives. That any person whom we see enjoying power, enjoying wealth or fame or any other advantages, special abilities, we understand they all come because in the past they have done something to please the Supreme Lord. But this is the danger when the good things come in life. We tend to forget, we tend to become ungrateful, right? So King Vena was very ungrateful. And this is adharma, because the whole Vedic culture is based on gratitude. Attitude of gratitude, as they say in the modern times. But materialistic life means just be, enjoy and don't worry about being grateful. And this is the problem with Mayavad approach. One time Srila Prabhupada, he demonstrated the mentality of Mayavadis. He requested some devotee, to help him up the hill. And so that devotee helped Prabhupada, brought him up the hill. But after Prabhupada was on the hill, he actually pushed the devotee down the hill. And the devotee was very surprised. Why did Srila Prabhupada push him down? But Prabhupada said this is exactly what Mayavadis do. They take the help of the Guru to come up, and once they are on the top, they push the Guru down. I don't need you anymore. I became God now, right? So this is the mentality which Vaishnavas are going against. Materialistic, ungrateful mentality. And so because this mentality is actually destroying everyone's lives, because the principle of yagya, and we can understand that Krishna consciousness is based on three things. Three most important things in life are, which are listed in the end of Bhagavad Gita, chapters 17 and 18. Anyone knows? What are the three most important things in life? Yagya is first, then second, Tapa and Dana. So three most important things in life are Yagya, Tapa and Dana. Right? Do you remember this? You should write it down. Yagya, Dana, Tapa. Because our life is meant to act for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, rather than for our own pleasure. This is called devotional service. And so this is called yagya, right? And why do we do that? What is the meaning of devotional service? It's very simple. Because Krishna is the one who is looking after us. And I suppose for those of you who come from devotional families, you already knew from the start that God is looking after you, obviously. But those who came across Krishna consciousness at kind of later stages in their lives, many of you would have that experience that you recognize that someone is really looking after me, someone is really protecting me, someone's really providing me. And so who is that? And I don't see that person who is doing all these things to me. And so then you learn it's the Supreme Lord, and his name is Krishna. And so he is the one, Eko Bahunam Vyavidadati Kaman, the one who is taking care of everyone. And so it's kind of natural tendency, natural instinct, that if someone is really doing a lot of good to you, what do you want to do? Children, if someone is doing good to you, what will you do?
Do good to them back.
Yeah, do good back. So naturally you want to express your gratitude. And so in this way, devotional service is very natural activity of every living entity, but unfortunately only human beings can realize that, okay, someone is really taking care of me. Animals, they cannot understand that, right? But human beings can understand. Someone is looking after me, so let me do something back. Let me express my gratitude. So Krishna's love towards us is prompting us to reciprocate and express our love, or at least gratitude, towards Krishna. And this is what we call yagya, right? Yagya is nothing but expression of our gratitude towards the Supreme Lord. And when we do something, the Supreme Lord was always taking care of us, and he's taking care of every living entity, even atheists, right? He's providing with light and air and everything else. If someone is an atheist, declares, there is no God, God is dead, or something along these lines, it doesn't mean that the light goes off to that person and he starts suffocating. Because no matter who is the person, he is still Krishna's child, right? And parents are taking care of the children. Some children are very good, like these children are very good. But other children are mischievous, right? And so, but parents, they take care of all the children. So in the same way, Supreme Lord, He's not discriminating. He is providing everyone with everything. But if someone is reciprocating, then the Supreme Lord shows very special mercy. And therefore, if someone is doing yajna, then the Lord shows extra special mercy. And that's why devotees feel extra special mercy of the Lord. And actually this mercy manifests according to the level of the yajna, involvement in yajna. That's why Krishna says, Yayathamam prapadente tam stata bhajamyaham. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. And so, naturally, you get so much facility, so much opportunity. For example, like one time we were taking prasadam with my spiritual master, and he was commenting, he said, almost 1 billion people on the earth go to sleep on empty stomachs, suffering the pains of hunger. I mean, it's unbelievable. Every single night, this is their life. They suffer from starvation. But I never heard any case of devotees starving, unless you do some fasting like on Janmashtami. But these are just, volunteer austerity for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. But otherwise, for example, there never been a case historically of any devotee dying from hunger. But unfortunately, we know quite a few cases of devotees actually leaving their bodies due to overeating. So our problem is not how to get, our problem is that we have too much, right? We get too much of everything. But why Krishna is giving devotees more than they need? Because devotees are meant to do dhan. Devotees are meant to share extras with those whom they meant to take care of, right? The Supreme Lord, Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, and then the third one is Tapa, right? Tapa means regulated life. Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that there are 3 types of tapasya. One is meant to perform of the body, of the speech, and the mind, and then he elaborates how to do that. So, this is called dharma. And if someone is destroying that, destroying the opportunities for yajna, then, there is no possibility of dana and there is no possibility of tapa. As a result, the whole dharma is destroyed, and that's why it creates very dangerous situation for everybody. And therefore, the Brahmanas felt that it's their duty to do something about it, to get involved. Even though Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, they are neutral, they're not interfering in politics, right? Sadhu taking part in politics is very strange phenomenon, right? That's why, someone like Mahatma Gandhi, his position is really strange, that it was really hard to figure out whether he's a saintly politician or political saint, right? And the line is really blurry. It's really hard to figure out, on which side he was. And because politics means friends and enemies, right? you take sides, but sadhus, they are not meant to take sides. The sadhus are meant to act for the welfare of all the living entities without any discrimination, right? And if you discriminate, that's material concept. This is why Prahlad Maharaj was, when he was preaching to Hiranyakashipu, he said, this business of dividing people into friends and enemies is material concept of life, etc. So that's why sadhus are not meant to take sides. But every rule has an exception. And this was exceptional emergency case. And that's why Brahmanas decided to take the responsibility and actually do something to remove that king. And as Devamrita Maharaj mentioned, that we're not meant to take part in the politics as well, because devotees are meant to be sadhus, but we still meant to take responsibility for the situation and do something to change the present position in order to benefit suffering humanity, because there is a lot of misery happening in the world due to mismanagement. Everything is perfectly arranged in this world, but because some people are too greedy and too lusty or too angry, they create, with their anarthas, they create a lot of trouble for other people. And that's why devotees, being well-wishers of other people, they are interested to do something to alleviate the misery with spiritual approach by yagya, dana, and tapa. All right, so anyone has any questions, comments on the subject? Anyone?
How can we apply this when we're in the street chanting or trying to distribute books?
How can we apply this concept when we chant on the street and distribute books? Well, we chant on the street to raise the awareness of God in people and distribute books to help them learn about Krishna consciousness. And of course, we don't have, apparently, we don't have so much influence on people, but if devotees are expert, they can influence people. Like Devamrita Maharaj mentioned, that there is not so much impact if we just distribute books or just chant on the street, but if we create systems which allow people to associate with devotees on a regular basis, then that change is possible. One very strong desire Prabhupada had from the very beginning of his preaching in India is to influence powerful people. That's why he was writing letters to Gandhi, and that's why he was giving his books to the former Prime Minister, Bahadur Lal Shastri, etc., etc. He wrote something to Nehru. So he made number of attempts to connect with people of influence, and even though it failed, but he never gave up. When he came to America, specifically, it's very interesting that Srila Prabhupada, he didn't go to London, for example, because he was joking about it. when he was asked, why didn't you go to London? Because logically speaking, he was already so old, right? And this trip on the cargo ship was really dangerous thing for him. And it would be much easier and closer to go to London rather than to United States. The trip, even on the ship, would not take more than a week, I suppose. Even less, right? And so, when he was asked, why didn't you go to London, he was joking. He was saying that so many of my godbrothers failed in London. I was thinking, if I will fail, at least just for change, I'll fail somewhere else. But we understand it was not that simple, because if you observe what Srila Prabhupada did, it was risk, but it was very carefully calculated risk. Because, you can just imagine so much effort, and literally he nearly died on that boat, having 2 heart attacks back to back. And after coming to United States, he didn't even go to the hospital. He just went straight ahead to carry on his mission. And he was brought to Butler, Pennsylvania. And in there, and we're telling all this because Srila Prabhupada is the best example for us to learn what is Krishna consciousness and how to apply it, right? The entire philosophy he presented in his books is illustrated by his personal example, by his life story. And so when he came to Butler, of course he had some difficulties, like he had to put up with the fact that he had to keep his products in a milk, in a fridge filled with meat, right? Something we can't even imagine. And, American culture means no culture, right? That Americans, they not only do not take their boots off when they enter into the house, sometimes they even sleep with their boots on, right? In their bed. Or they sit and they put their legs with their boots on the dining table, right? You go to the toilet and then you put the same boots on the dining table. So that's American culture, the greatest influence on the planet. This is where all the problems come. And so Prabhupada had to put up with it, like people walking in their boots all over, and, in his room as well. And the smoking was so prominent, everybody was smoking. Even the wife of, that Gopal Agarwal was smoking. And they were smoking everywhere, all over the place. And sometimes, guests would come to talk to Prabhupada, and they would smoke, right? Come with smoking cigarette in their mouth and sit next to Prabhupada and, like, Swamiji, can I ask you a few questions? Okay? Do you mind me smoking? And you know what Prabhupada was saying? Think nothing of it. So he had to put up with so many things we can't even imagine. And so, but after a while, I suppose Paramatma in the hearts of these people was telling them, looks like Swamiji is really inconvenienced because his lifestyle is very different from ours, right? They recognized that. They saw the stark difference. So they decided, okay, let us give him a separate facility away from us. And so they hired a room in YMCA hostel, for Srila Prabhupada. I can only imagine how much relief Prabhupada felt, having his own room and keeping it clean, etc., etc. And then he started actually getting many invitations to different places, speaking engagements. Even in churches he would come and preach. And, reporters started writing articles on him because it was a big thing. Tiny sleeping town in the middle of Pennsylvania, Butler, like if Srila Prabhupada would not go there, who would ever know that Butler existed, right, on the planet? We would never even hear about this place. And so in this tiny little insignificant place, the real Indian Swami, right? And so that became a big news. And so he became kind of star in the Butler, right? And so after all this effort and nearly dying, he finally achieved some success. People were listening to him and they were writing articles about Krishna consciousness, etc. It appeared that that's it. He, finally got it. And what he's doing next is really important, that he drops Butler with everything he's achieved there, and he goes to New York, wherein he knows absolutely nobody. And in New York, he's literally treated as nobody, right? Because New York is such a place, anyone been there, whether you live or die, no one will even care, right? There are so many people there. But Prabhupada goes to New York, and he's not going anywhere in New York, he goes to Manhattan. And even though he struggles so hard, and even though he doesn't have any money, and Manhattan is a really expensive place, but he rents a room at Bowery, which is really interesting place because Manhattan is high-end, but Bowery is pretty cheap. And still it is much cheaper, even now, 50 years later. So and Prabhupada rents something there, a very, very cheap place, full of bums and horrible place, but it is as close to Manhattan as it was possible for him. So we can see that he knows exactly what he wants. Absolutely, he has his target, and he's going for it despite of any obstacles. And then he explains that why, of all the places he went to New York and of all the areas he chose Manhattan, and we can see as soon as he gets an opportunity, he moves right into Manhattan, 26 2nd Street, right? It's not the most prominent area in Manhattan, but it is Manhattan nevertheless. And then he writes in the letter to, I can't remember, to some devotee that he said, we've got this place in Manhattan because it is very close to United Nations headquarters, because we want to work with the United Nations. And so, because Srila Prabhupada figured it out, right? That Krishna consciousness is meant to be spread worldwide, and the natural hub, which is connecting everything worldwide, is United Nations. And so if we manage to get United Nations interested in Krishna consciousness, that's it. We'll have the whole planet. And this is his strategy. And then he gets the first engagement. That actually he contacts, or devotees contact United Nations because of his desire. And one man who is in charge of whatever communications, he invites Srila Prabhupada together with his disciples to take part in International Day of Peace, which is coming soon, I believe. Or, anyway, it's sometime in summer. And so, or September, I think, right? Sometime in September, International Day of Peace. And so they ask him to do the prayer for peace, for the world's peace. And Prabhupada comes with all the devotees. They start kirtan. But then the organizer comes, he says, Swamiji, if everyone will start praying in their style, we'll have, everything messed up. So that's why we've agreed that everyone will make silent prayer for peace. And Prabhupada says, fine. And then he tells all the devotees, stop kirtan, take japa beads, and silently chant japa. And so all the devotees sit together and they chant japa. And this organizer is so impressed with Srila Prabhupada. He comes, he says, this is wonderful. And we want to work with you further. So let us discuss how we can get you involved into United Nations programs. And Prabhupada is very happy with that. Initial success, he invites that man for lunch to his apartment. And so him and Kirtanananda, they are preparing lunch for him. And he didn't have many devotees available at the time who could support him. So there was one boy there, but he was known to be a little strange. But anyway, I suppose Prabhupada never had any other choice. He told him, just stay down and wait. We are expecting very influential men to come from United Nations. We are cooking lunch for him on the top. And if anyone else comes, I'm not available. So tell anyone else that they cannot see me. And so this boy is downstairs and Prabhupada's upstairs with Kirtanananda preparing this big feast. And then this man comes and Prabhupada tells him the time, right, when this man is expected. But then this man, I guess being overly enthusiastic, he actually comes before time. He comes earlier. And he says, can I see the Swamiji? And this devotee tells him that Swamiji is expecting very important guest, and so he is not available for anyone. And the man says, I am the important guest he is waiting for. And this boy says, he ordered not to disturb him, so I'm not going to tell him. And the man says, okay, I'll wait here until the time, right? Until the allocated time. So he's waiting, and then the time comes, and he tells, now is the time, so could you please tell the Swamiji that I am here? And this devotee says, no, Swamiji doesn't want me to disturb him. And then the man, tells him, but, I've got the appointment. And the devotee says, no, I cannot help you. And then the man becomes so upset that he says, this is not how you conduct the business. And then he storms out of the shop and runs away, being really annoyed. And then after that happens, in a minute, Prabhupada comes down and he says, what happened that we're expecting this man? Is he late? And that devotee is not telling anything. And then Prabhupada suspects that something happened here. He said, did anyone come? He said, yes, one man came. He was really arrogant and he wanted to see you. How did he look like? What did he say? And then Prabhupada says, this is exactly the man we were expecting. And so he got on this devotee's case, of course. I guess the first time Prabhupada ever became angry. But it was too late. And it looks like historically, after that Prabhupada realized that with this kind of crowd around him, it would be an embarrassment to do something serious. So he just settles for whoever comes and works with them, tries to kind of build up his foundation. But this was his first and foremost desire, to work with the people of influence, because people of influence have the kind of facility nobody else has. And because this was also his spiritual master's strategy, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And that's why, we do not change the things we do. We still distribute books, we still chant the holy name, we still give people prasadam, but we can change our strategy to make it much more effective. And so this is where the Buddhi Yoga comes into picture. That Bhakti Yoga means Buddhi Yoga, and that's why we really need to apply our intelligence in order to be effective, right? Because otherwise we do things for a long, long time, and then if we judge by the results, there are hardly any results, so we have to think whether, our approach is effective or not. Yes?
Maharaj, you mentioned about how Krishna gives us more so we can distribute to others. But generally when we become devotees, or when we start practicing Krishna consciousness, usually we coming from a background where many of us are already burnt out by the heat, material energy. And so when we come to Krishna consciousness, it's such a relief. And receiving all things from Krishna, it just makes you feel so happy. And so you want to get everything that you can instead of wanting to give it to others, because it's again interacting with these people, and it's not it's not immediately rewarding. So so how do we get the motivation to give others?
Yeah. Well, yes, that for grihastas, this is the first and foremost duty to give, right? Because brahmacharis are doing yagya, grihastas should be doing dana, and manaprastas and sannyasis should be doing tapa, right? This is how Prabhupada explains that according to according to ashramas, all these activities are divided in this way. And so, in terms of giving, mostly this is the duty of grihastas, because grihasta means you have to work for money, right? You cannot, unless you're on the level of Srivas Thakur, who was like clapping 3 times, and then, this is how his household was maintained. Unless you're on this level of, and we understand that Srivas Thakur is Narad Muni, so it's not very common level of devotion. You have to work pretty hard for your money. And if you work very hard and you hardly maintain your household and you have very little to give, maybe it's time to work smart rather than work hard and apply your intelligence, because we can see that certain people, they get $30 or $40 per hour, and other people get $40,000 per hour or $400,000 per hour. And what's the difference between one who gets 40 and one who gets 40,000? Same head, same brain, everything is the same. It just thinking scale is different, right? One who has broader scale, he gets more results. And so I was thinking that one thing devotees unnecessarily shy away from is from being ambitious, because we can see Prabhupada was very ambitious, thinking big, right? Prabhupada was thinking big. And so it's like very simple calculation. According to Vedic standard, Grihasthas meant to give away 50% of their wealth for Guru Krishna and Vaishnavas and promoting Krishna consciousness. But if you earn just enough to maintain your household, it's not practically possible, right? That if you give 50%, you'll be in debt, correct? But we see that so many people, even they are not devotees, they give 70, 80, 90% of their wealth. Why? Because they have so much, like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. They are committed to give, I think, 90% of their wealth in their lifetime, right? Because they have so much. And so automatically, actually, that should make you think, if I meant to give 50% as a Grihastha, I should have so much, at least 50%. I should have so much that 50% would not even be noticeable for my household, right? So it's a simple thing. If you're making money anyway, you're wasting your time on this. Why don't you make a lot, right? And use those resources for spiritual purposes. So that's for Grihasthas, right? And for Brahmacharis, yes, and to some extent for sannyasis also, that we're not meant to be interacting with money, women, all these things. But if you do it in a smart way, you can encourage other people who are doing that anyway, right? Do it better, do it for Krishna. And so, yeah, if you cannot do something yourself, encourage others. And so, in this way, renunciates should support those who have taken responsibility for acting in this society, like Grihasthas. Because, yeah, Grihasthas, Prabhupada says, it's one ashram which is meant to support financially, economically, 3 ashrams, right? All brahmacharis, all vanaprasthas, and all sannyasis are fully depending on Grihasthas, right? And so, naturally, all the renunciates should be encouraging Grihasthas to become very ambitious for Krishna, become very professional, become very efficient and successful, because their success is directly related to the success of the society, right? If you don't have Grihasthas, you don't have society. So, and this is what Varnashram means. Varnashram means that there is a mutual support and cooperation. That you can see Chaupati is really amazing model, that brahmacharis there, they are divided into 2 major groups, and the senior most and most experienced and knowledgeable of them are looking after the congregation members. They're supporting and encouraging grihastas and educating them and training them. And then younger brahmacharis, they're involved in student preaching, right? Senior ones are working on maintenance, and junior ones are working on expanding the mission. So it's a perfect position in the society. So, and yes, that if you really do something of value for the people, for grihastas, for example, they will be happy to reciprocate with the donations, right? That for myself, I can see that if I try to give something of the value, I can see reciprocation. And so the kind of donations devotees give me, I don't need them for myself because it's very minimum. So naturally, I can use those funds, like I'm doing that for the Mayapur school to pay for scholarships, and even we got pitching fund last year. So yeah, it takes a lot of money, but everyone can give donations, even renunciates. If they really serious about their duties, they will be getting much more donations than they require for their own expenses. And so the surplus, they can reinvest back into the community to help the community grow properly. Yeah, but I was thinking that funding is really important. That Prabhupada was really money smart. That was one thing about Srila Prabhupada. That's why he achieved so much success. And so if we are to properly follow Prabhupada's example, we should be also very conscious of that. All right. We'll stop here. Thank you all very much. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.